good game coming up on CBS Sports Network. UCLA at UNLV. Two quarterbacks in Nico Iamaleava and Anthony Colandrea, who both made their collegiate debuts in the same game back in September of 2023. Tennessee went on to beat Virginia with neither of those guys starting. So now both of them step into the starting ranks. And I want to focus on Nico Iamaleava for a moment because his debut with UCLA, it wasn't perfect. 11 of 22, 136 yards, 1 of 1 in terms of touchdowns and interceptions as they got worked by Utah. But head coach Deshaun Foster recognized Nico showing some promise for the rest of the season. Take a listen.
The only thing I was worried about is him just sliding. That was it. You know, he's a very athletic kid. He's played multiple sports. He's like a high-level athlete, so, you know, he can extend the play and go. But you guys saw a quarterback play off schedule the whole time against us. So, you know, it's not really a concerning thing that I think the O-line did a good job in protecting him. And we just got in a situation where we had to be one-dimensional just because of the score.
College football continues this weekend, so let's get a preview with our guys Emory Hunt and Chip Patterson. Guys, I want to pick up the conversation right there with Nico Iamaleava. Wasn't a ton to love in that loss to Utah, but you heard Deshaun say there that there were some good things. I read the stat line. Emory, after his performance, how would you grade Nico Iamaleava at his new team?
C-, and at the end of the day, it was mainly because he looked skittish in the pocket. You expect a guy that had played in the SEC, that had played in the playoff game, that played well at times at Tennessee in a spread open offense. You expected him to come into UCLA and be the steady hands that guides the ship. But we didn't see that last week against Utah, and Utah was probably the best test for him right out of the gate because Utah replicates everything that he saw in the SEC. So the things that we wanted to see him improve on, leaving Tennessee, he didn't really improve on in that one game, that one outing, that one showing against the Utah Utes.
Yeah, he did not have time to throw, Haley. He was under duress all night long. Utah bringing a 59% pressure rate, and you go and you look of his completions, which, as you mentioned, were not many, 11. 4 of them are right in front of the line, middle of the field, very much check down variety. He only had 3 attempts in 22 where he even tried to throw the ball more than 20 yards down the field. There wasn't even time for those downfield rights to develop. So I'm with Emory. I don't think that he gave himself a chance. He took off scrambling a lot more maybe than he necessarily needed to, and yet still we don't have a lot to chew on in terms of things to really be excited about. Is it a passing grade? Yes. We are not calling for the backup, but it is only barely one that gets you credit. Unfortunately, I do know that cutoff is a C-.
It's hard, too, when you think about the process of Nico coming to UCLA, the expectations not matching up with the performance, but it is only week 1. I will say that the bad news in that is that loss to Utah was the largest margin of defeat in an opener since the 1980s, so it didn't exactly strike fear into opponents after that one. And we're already hearing some chirps on the other side of this matchup from UNLV. I want you guys to take a look at what DB Amaris Brown had to say about Nico. He said, quote, "Honestly, nothing really sticks out to me about him on tape. You know, in the past, there's been talk about 5-star this, 5-star that. I've been around plenty of 5-star and 4-star players. It don't scare me." He went on to say, "I've played competition higher than them, including Alabama and all that. Going against a guy like Nico, there's no surprise, there's no excitement, nothing like that." I mean, guys, we are getting bold in college football, but I'm kind of living for it. Like, give me Tommy Castellanos. He backed it up last week. Chip, are we going to see UNLV back it up this week?
I mean, Haley, this is going to be a dogfight of a game. And the thing that I love about Amaris Brown coming out like this is UNLV's roster is all of the 4-stars and 5-stars who have lost their way. Because Dan Mullen blew into a conch shell, and he said, "Blue chips assemble!" And whether it was JoJo Earl, you know, whether it was Justin Flo, whether it was even, as Amaris Brown mentioned, other former SEC players, the former Mississippi State and Florida head coach has basically gone through the 24/7 Sports recruiting rankings, found everybody who hasn't been able to find a fit, and he's gathered them all together in Las Vegas. Now, did I think that was going to be a volatile situation? Absolutely. But it's Dan Mullen, and we're trusting his coaching. The reason that you've got so much confidence in that UNLV UNLV locker room is the players in that UNLV locker room were around, and some of them were 4 stars and 5 stars coming out of high school. They know it's not about your ranking in high school. It's about how you play on Saturdays, and that's why they're trying to bring the fight to a quarterback who they think does not look very 5-star right now.
Why grab the dice if you're not going to roll? I love that for UNLV. All the smack talk they're doing, and they're backing it up. What I love most about what Emory Brown did is that he's on the defensive side. So he has to go up against Nico Iamaleava. So that tells you, bro, I am on to what you're trying to put down. I am going to take that away because he did it against Sam Houston. He's been in the backfield, TFLs, has an interception. He's been lighting up the stat sheet. So for me, when you're talking trash, like we saw Tommy Castellanos do, and you have to go out there and then subsequently back it up. We've seen UNLV figure out how to play defense from one game to the next. So I'm excited about this matchup because there's intrigue. Utah gave them a little bit of the blueprint on how to pressure Nico, and let's see if they can replicate that. And Emory Brown is the star on that defense side of football. And I love that he's talking smack because this is what we needed now in college football. All the, pleasantries are out the window now. We got coaches talking smack to each other. This is what we're here for, and I am loving this on CBS Sports Network.
What was that, Dan Lanning telling so-and-so to step your money up, bud? Like, your roster's got to pay what you pay. I love to see it. We've kind of talked about it, right? Dan Mullen making his return after he swore up and down he was never going to coach football again, and yet here we are. Ultimately, though, he wanted to go to a program that he felt was the right fit, and here he is. He's got UNLV sitting at 2-0 to start the season. Chip, what stood out to you about what Dan Mullen has done, especially given the fact that he did take a little bit of a break and he took over a program that, kind of a middle-of-the-pack Mountain West type team?
Yeah, I think what he sees at UNLV is an investment that isn't necessarily replicated at the rest of the conference. And I think that at UNLV, he's got the opportunity, as we discussed earlier, to pull together a lot of players that aren't necessarily finding their spots on SEC and Big Ten teams. And for Dan Mullen, the idea that you're going to be able to get some players that have maybe been overlooked or kicked to the curb a little bit early and maximize them, hello, that's what he did in Starkville, Mississippi at Mississippi State, because Mississippi State's sustained success under Dan Mullen and the way he was able to really develop players and lead them to success within his system, particularly on offense, that is the kind of place where I think he can thrive. At Florida, they got mad at him because he wasn't recruiting enough. But at UNLV, it's a different recruiting landscape where you don't need to win everything on National Signing Day out of high school because so much of the UNLV roster is going to be a little bit transient. So give me a ball coach who can take players with a lot of raw talent and raw tools and be able to coach them up and bend his system to let them thrive. I think that's why this is so going to be successful. Haley, I believe UNLV under Dan Mullen is a top 3 Mountain West program any year that he's on the sideline.
It'll be interesting to see, especially when you think about who's moving out of the Mountain West and all of the changes in terms of the alignment. This is a good year to set the tone if you're Dan Mullen. I did mention in the lead up in our conversation, guys, these two quarterbacks. We've talked about Nico Iamaleava, but on the other side, another guy, both of these two making their debuts back in 2023, but were not starting quarterbacks. So it's kind of an interesting wrinkle that has them tied together. But Emory, when you look at a guy like Anthony Calandria, why does he have your attention in this one?
Because he can win in multiple ways. We saw him win with his legs in the opener against Idaho State, had 93 yards rushing. Then we saw him win with his arm last weekend against Sam Houston with throwing for 249 yards and also completing 82% of his passes. So on the season, he has 77% completion percentage, and he's won games in 2 separate ways. And that bodes well for him moving forward because this offense will have to win games in different ways. Sometimes you may need both elements of your game to win the matchup, and he's able to do that. I like that he's grown since the last time we saw him at Virginia, and this is a really good spot for guys to go in there and develop. Chip talked about it because when you think about recruiting in major cities, like you look at these schools that don't normally have success because all the city guys leave and go elsewhere. You talk about UNLV, Tulane, UCLA, Temple, all these schools in these metro areas don't do a good job of recruiting. Dan Mullen is the perfect coach there because he could be a reclamation project, which is what we're seeing here with Anthony Calandria.
I'm going to be looking at running back Jaden Thomas for UNLV. They call him Jet for a reason, because as soon as he landed at UNLV, he's been doing nothing but scoring touchdowns. He entered this season starting to knock on the door of some program records, and with a couple scores already in those first 2 games and those first 2 wins for the Rebels, it is very clear that even though we've got a new head coach, Jaden Thomas stuck around because Dan Mullen believes in him, and Dan Mullen is telling us he believes in him by giving him the daggum rock. So he's got the kind of breakaway speed to be able to make some big plays against a UCLA defense that gave up some big plays to Utah a week ago. So I think as I look at UNLV's offense, which now has committed to Calandria after starting with a little bit of a quarterback system for the season opener, it's Calandria and also Jaden Thomas. That is a terrific 1-2 punch in the backfield.
It all gets underway tomorrow night, 8 o'clock Eastern on CBS Sports Network. By the way, our Jordan Giorgio going to be on the sidelines for that one, making her debut. So we'll be sure to root her on as this one gets underway. Fellas, we appreciate it. More smack talk in college football. That's what I took away from this conversation. Of course, I mentioned it, 8 o'clock Eastern for UCLA and UNLV, but we've also got a triple header leading up to that. Liberty, Jacksonville State at 12 o'clock Eastern, and then UAB taking on Navy. Brandon Baylor on the sidelines for that one as well. College football officially back on CBS Sports Network.